Okay guys, I have a build video for you. It's one of my first videos, so I hope you enjoy it. It's basically going to be a build video. As you can see, this build's not going to be for the faint of heart. It's really a combination of 2 years worth of work, refining and getting the pieces together and waiting for the stars and planets to align in terms of the right combinations of items and sets, and it will always be in development, something I'll be refining, because it's basically the playstyle and the way I like to fly my ships. So without further ado, let's begin. Basically this build is designed to do a lot of burst damage that penetrates shield holes and kill targets pretty quickly, and if not, have enough speed to run away, and failing that, have enough survivability to last long enough to fly away. The first bit, the easy bit, was actually the damage. Getting the damage together was the first step, and I did that really through using disruptors. As you can see, I've been using primarily raiders with 5 full weapons, which allowed the largest amount of front loading, usually 3 or 2 cannons with 1 or 2 beam banks, and in combination with the space trait, that increased beam overload damage that bypassed shields. This was quite effective early on. Originally I stacked 2 or 3 of these DOFs for overlapping chances and overlapping and stacking shield penetration damage, and that was really effective, but I had massive survivability issues, and it's not really until recently I've been getting the right balance between damage and survivability. So I'll just go over the items. 2 to 3 accuracy with crit D or crit H or damage. I like the over trait because it's a free beam overload that doesn't lock out your current beam overload. And I've gone with a combination of Elachi and coalition weapons. I prefer Elachi over coalition, but coalition do more damage over time. The problem with Elachi is the proc chance isn't really high, so you need to stack a lot of the weapons and to have a good chance of proccing. But when you do, that kind of 50% armor penetration and 100% shield penetration means your next beam overload is just going to go straight through their hull, and it's often allowed me to 1-2 shot ships. Same in the turrets coalition. And now for the deflector and engine, I'm actually using the brand new prevailing regalia set, the 2-piece, and that's going to be a 3-piece when I get the shield, which I don't have yet because I've not got up to the reputation mark level. But the deflector gives you a massive amount of crit chance, plus 40 to weapon criticals, so that's about 1 or 2 crit chance. And the engine is absolutely amazing. Upon firing a weapon modifier like beam overload or cannon rapid fire, you gain plus 300 flight and turn rate, and that's like having your evasives on quite often. So I'll demonstrate. I'll fly my ship in a straight line. I'll add rapid fire, my speed goes crazy for 5 seconds, and you can chain it with different weapon modes, kind of coming in just at the right time. I've only got rapid fire and beam overload, but that's usually about 10 seconds uptime out of 15, so at 10 seconds I'm doing speeds which are higher than my full impulse speed. So when my full rotation's up, as you'll see, I just need to wait for just a moment so you can see my flight speed jumped up to 200 for a second. That's over full impulse speed, and that's one of the reasons why I appear so fast. That in combination with some of the pilot bridge officer abilities, which I'll come to later. Continuing through the build, those are the stats for the engine. This is the warp core I'm using at the moment. I thought about using the Iconia warp core just to get the 2-piece bonus, but on balance it's probably not worth it. There isn't really anything special going on, and the weapon drain resistance and the power transfer rate more than make up for any of the slight shield regeneration buff you get with a 2-piece. The Iconian shield, pretty good, but the new reputation one is much better, especially the innovated versions, which will first of all give me a 3-piece bonus, and it will give me crit chance and placates. So that's the next piece of the puzzle. As for heavy weapons, I'm using the warhead. It's good. I don't have the railgun from the cat ship, and this is better than the alternative, which I think was boosted, but it still feels I prefer weapons with a higher alpha strike, so a longer duration, but when I do fire it, it will obviously give me more damage. And although this doesn't have the shield penetration, this does have a AoE, so anything within a 1 km radius will get some damage out of this. For the devices, red matter and engines and auxiliary, I often swap this out for either the targeting lock battery or the energy amplifier, but you can pretty much run whatever you need. The auxiliary just helps me whilst in the middle of a knockabout cycle. I can run hazard emitters at full power, and they also boost the engine speed, so that can help. But sometimes I'm fighting against other escorts, and plus 50 accuracy really makes a massive difference. For the engineering consoles, I've got the standard EPS console, so again that stacks with the warp core to give me increased EPS. That basically recharges your weapon power faster after firing your weapons. I've also got the regenerative integrity field, which increases your hull heal, and it's like a reverse shield polarity for hull. It's a 2-minute recharge, so you use it basically in emergencies, but if you're being pounded on and you need a few more moments to escape, or if you're attack patterns aren't ready yet, then it's a good weapon. It's a good module to flip on. And as you can see, it's on my top tray with all of the rest of my healing buffs. Going through the rest of the consoles in my science console, as you can see, season 13, no more plasma consoles, so you've got a lot more variety here. And at the moment I'm using the Nor-Nissian siphon capacitor, which gives a pretty nice two-piece bonus to well, it gives you this disruptor net bonus that I'm not actually using, but the 3-piece bonus is really good, especially if you have all 3 pieces in your build. But I think that would probably be a net DPS loss for me, because there's no I think there's a turret, but there's no dual heavy cannon to the build. But the actual stats on its own are more than make up for it. Again, more power transfer, more disruptor damage, a lot more disruptor damage, and drain expertise, which is always good, because as well as increasing the amount of power you drain, you also have resistance to drain. So yeah, this console came with a ship. It's a bit silly, it's a bit OP. And you can see the cooldown's 90 seconds. Gives you 15% critical chance for 20 seconds. And it placates your foes, and it gives you crit severity, and it gives you radar flanking. And if you look at the 2-piece bonus, it gives you lots of damage and lots of hull penetration as well. So the electrical damage for the particle focuser array is savage, and that can kill people with all your attack patterns and captain buffs going. That's enough to kill people on its own with 4 stacks. It can crit for 100,000k I've seen, and it's like a slow, like 10-second dot damage effect, but each second it's doing between 15 to 100 damage, fully buffed, if it crits, straight to hull, pretty much. And you can see the stats. It also has passive bonuses to direct energy damage and energy damage resistance. So yeah, that's a fun console to have. And plus it completes a 2-set bonus with that console. The plasmodic leech, but that's on notice at the moment. This build doesn't rely upon it, even though you can see my weapons power isn't at 100 on base. There's a lot of stuff going on, but most of the time when I'll be firing with the leech, it'll be well above that. Although they say to overcap your weapon power, so there's still that debate. And for the tactical consoles, I've got vulnerability locators for disruptors. I might be dropping 1 or 2 of them soon for new consoles, but at the moment I'm running 5. And you can see the stats. I sit with a base 21% crit chance and 75% crit severity, which is a bit low in the crit severity stats, but I guess that works for now. And this is what it looks like. I'm using the Miradorn Miradorn Raider. It's a pilot ship. It comes with the pilot controls, and it also comes with a pilot captain, which is pretty awesome. And moving on to the bridge officers, I'm using like a hybrid Ox to Damp, Ox to Bat build, and you'd think it wouldn't work, and it shouldn't really work with just one
emergency to battery, but as you'll see in the traits, it's enough to keep tactical team, even tactical team, on global cooldown. So yeah, there's emergency power to engines, oxidamp, emergency power to emergency battery, tactical team, chemosite, beam overload free, emergency power to shields, which is pretty important, and I'll go through why later, and override subsystem safeties, and hazard emitters. In a team with good heals, I'd probably take hazard emitters off and use a very target lock. If I have it, I'll show you. I don't have it on this. Oh, there we go. So minus 40 accuracy, untargetable, and so you do minus 40 accuracy to whoever you use it on. You're untargetable, and yeah, sometimes it disables the foe for a second or two. So whenever you disable someone, your shield go off, the engines turn off, the weapons go off, and sometimes some abilities such as transfer shields will stop working, and it's a great ability to use in PvP, especially against other escorts. But for now I'm sticking with hazards because it's the only heal I have really on this build. And on to where all the fun stuff is. Attack pattern lambda 1. As you can see, the gives an accuracy bonus and an accuracy bonus to yourself, an accuracy penalty to anyone who hits you. It also has a really annoying placate and perception effect to anyone who targets you or who attempts to shoot you. So it's a massive bonus to defense and a massive bonus to hit chance. I mean, it's not as good as attack pattern delta prime if you manage to get aggro, but that's not really the idea. This is a bit more subtle. It lets you knife fight whilst dancing around half of the damage in the field. And I'm using it at rank 1 because it doesn't really scale very well, whereas pilot team does. And the big deal with this one is immunity to movement debuffs and that massive plus 122 to speed and turn rate. So one thing to note is that emergency power to dampeners and a pilot team, the speed bonuses do not stack, so whichever is the highest will be the speed bonus. However, the turn rate bonus do stack, so you get increased turn rate and increased turn rate, so you're almost turning around about 180 degrees a second, which is preposterous, and unless you've got amazing graphics cards, then you're going to be getting a lot of screen tearing. I mean, the game is not coded amazingly, so you're always going to get jittery and turning whatever you do, but just something to note there. And clean getaway, again, this is basically my get out of jail button. It's low cooldown, it's like having a second evasive maneuvers. It also stacks with evasive maneuvers. It's an amazing amount of speed, and it also resets aggro, so it can placate people. And if you're stuck in a tractor beam, it's a good ability to use it along with evasive maneuvers. And I use cannon rapid fire free because it has the most damage, and as I'm not using Omega or any of your other attack patterns, it makes sense to go with the biggest one, and there isn't really that much there I'd want to use. I've experimented with reroute power to weapons, but I've never really liked it that much. It doesn't. I've never really understood it. I don't really think it's better than the alternatives, but I could be wrong. And when I come to my traits, it's probably the best single target damage option out there beyond beam overload, because of the trait. So I'll just go through the starship traits really quickly. Super weapon ingenuity, 2 beam overloads for free. So the reason why I have 2 beam overload arrays, because you don't have to wait for the same beam to recharge before firing. Go 1, 2, and that's normally enough to prop the DOF. At the moment I'm using Invincible. If you don't have Invincible, you can get Target Tactical Retreat, which is I think you can just get that from the exchange, and it placates everybody. Peak efficiency, so this is the reason why I only need 1 Oxtabat. This kind of fills in the gaps. When I activate all my other skills, you'll see they'll skip in time every so often, and when Oxtabat comes round, these skills should now be on global cooldown and ready to activate again. It's a tricky skill to use because you have to remember that you have to be over 80% of hull, so when you're doing fun and games with go down fighting, you have to be aware that your tactical team may not always be in global cooldown. So, but otherwise it's a good skill. I mean, alternatively you could go with I've forgotten the name, but there's other skills out there. I think reciprocity is a good alternative, and that comes from one of the intel ships. Okay, another skill I use is shield overload, and that increases your hull resistance every time your emergency power to shield comes on. So if I go to my stats, these are my resists with, I think Oxidamp is on, and as I need to go 15-second cooldown. So my Oxidamp is on, my emergency power to shield is about to come on. You'll see those resists spike. So they've all gone up by about 20 of about 30 points, and then it'll slowly go down. But it just leaves you with a good average resists, and if you see radiation, you don't have normal resist radiation, and in today's PvP environment that's quite important to have resists to everything. And going to the last one, go for the kill. Critical hits increase duration of cannon rapid fire for 3 seconds, and this basically allows cannon rapid fire to have 0 downtime, unlike Fire at Will, which has a 50% on, 50% off time. You're basically doing damage with cannons all the time. There are builds which just use cannon rapid fire on its own as a single source of damage, but I don't actually use that at the moment because of the shield penetration from the beam overloads. But there will be other build videos where, especially on a bug ship, and I've seen other people who've had build videos that just focus around can rapid fire damage. Okay, so I'll quickly run through the space personal traits. Lative shell, it's good, not amazing. Like to have accuracy back, but all the other ones are kind of taking their place for now. Give your all, it's great. Gives you dodge every time you activate an engineering ability, which is like all the time. So that's basically just 20% damage resistance for half the time you're flying. Good Day to Die is basically a must-have trait, and if you're a tactical captain and you don't have it, just get it now, because that's really the only trait I'd recommend above all else. Helmsman for evasive maneuvers, reduce cooldown. I still use Inspirational Leader, probably not that much worth it, but it's still useful, it still gives good bonuses, good all-rounder. I use this for the shield penetration, and the accuracy is good, but mostly the shield penetration. This is basically my biggest heal in the passes. It basically gives me the most hit points over a match. And you're confused quite often in modern PvP. You're placated, you're tractor beamed, you're tractor repulsed, you're gravity whirled, and every time that happens you get huge hit point boost and damage resistance, and that low 30 second trigger time is really good. At the moment I'm experimenting with Smuggler's Luck, because that's a lot of defense. So anytime your shields go down, you get plus 40 defense and immunity to control for 60 seconds, so that's great for getting in and out, and you just wait a little while and you can go back in. You've got the standard self-modulating fire. This is probably the second most important trait in this build, so if you want to replicate this build you should get this trait, and really you should try and get it anyway. I'm not sure if you can just get it from the exchange. You probably can, but it might be something you can get from a mission. And last ditch effort, because I'm always using go down fighting, and it's just an extra 40% damage resistance, so if that's extra 40 damage, well, it goes to 60 now, so basic go down fighting gives you 20 and now it gives you 60, and when you combine that with everything else, that's just a huge amount of damage resistance as when you need it usually. There are other things I recommend, like photonic shield protocols and accuracy and elusive, and I mean, there's been a lot of things I've used and stopped using because something better's come along, or something that fits this build has come along, and there are things that I'm just trying out. So maybe I'll do another version of this in a year or two when I've passed all of the options and I know which one's the best version. Going on to the space reputation traits, I'm using Unshaken Resolve because there's a lot of immunities going, and this is let me got a few quick kills, because that plus 75% armor penetration lets you pancake armor and hull really quickly after they've come out of immunity. When this trait first came out, I wasn't really that impressed, because why would you be firing on something that was immune? But you do that quite often, and immunities are quite common even though I run with immunity, so it's a good trait to try. This rolling tide though might be a new option, and I'm thinking it might work with this build better. There might be something else I can take off it instead, but we'll see. I'm using advanced engines, just a base flight speed and turn rate boost. Doesn't look that much by today's options, but that is stacking on top of everything else you have. The stabilizing phase array, this is an immunity. It feels like it works more often than it does, or than it's supposed to, because of the 60-second lockout, but that's probably because I'm using it in conjunction with the piloting specialization tree. So we'll go into that in a moment, but essentially it just gives you an immunity, and that's probably the one I'm most likely to uncheck in the future. Viral engine overload basically slows down your opponent's massive minus 57% flight speed and turn rate for 10 seconds, and it's every 30 seconds, and it offlines engines as well. So this acts almost like a tractor beam to other players and escorts. It does get cleansed by pilot team and other abilities like that, so it's not perfect, but against most targets you can strike them, offline their engines, cut their defense ratings down to negative values, and basically go straight into accuracy overflow. And so it's really cool for like alpha strikes and burst damage and precision. So yeah, that's just 4% crit chance, basically obligatory. I wish I could take it off, but crit chance is crit chance. And active space is pretty ghetto, nothing really out of the ordinary there. These are the best ones to have, the cloak and the biomedical shield. These do okay damage, but aren't that useful. I don't really incorporate them into my builds that much, and would be replaced by better alternatives as soon as they become available. Going to skills, this is my skill tree. I have tactical ultimate at level 2 with the team frenzy and frenzied assault, and there isn't that much to say apart from I made sure I had hull plating up and improved hull resistances and restoration. I should have had more hull capacity, but I just ran out of points really. It feels like I should have more points than I have, or I should have more points available than I spent. But when I'm looking at it, there's nothing I'd really want to change. I think in general, things you need to have are lots of hull resistances, lots of hull tanking is really important. If you're doing damage, then long range targeting sensors is really good for cannons and beams. For this build I don't really need projectiles, but it's there because I use this character for everything really, so, and that's quite a good bonus to have for your team. And if everyone on your team has it, that's just 20% accuracy or 25% accuracy and damage for everyone on your team, if everyone on your team is using the same skill. I do know that probability manipulation is quite tempting to some pilots, but you also need all of this other stuff, so and the focus frenzy is quite good on a single target basis, so that's a lot of damage. And the specialization, I'm using Intel secondary, but that might switch back to strategist, because it just gives you like cool counteroffensive. That's good. It protects you from torpedoes, and especially the old school alpha strikers. This gives you crit chance and crit severity when you have the right when you've toggled your strategist's diversionary tactics. And attrition warfare used to be really good, but it recently got nerfed. Going back to intelligence, I use this mainly for it regenerates shields, gets rid of placates, and gives you damage resistance bonuses. So it's quite a good all-round intelligence. Is quite a good all-rounder to have for your secondary or even primary specialist trait, because it gives a lot of damage. It has a lot of cleanses for placate, and it gives you accuracy and defense. And my main one is pilot, and I'm using this at the moment just purely for the defense. The main one is in the thick of it, which gives you immunity, and rock and roll is quite a good immunity. And the attack pattern expertise gives you temporary hit points, which basically acts like immunity. So you're to opponents, if it'll seem like you're not taking damage for several seconds, maybe even half a second's worth of why isn't he going down, and that's enough to do what you need to do and get out. I really hate the ultimate ability compared to temporal, which basically is a cheat death and a skill recharge. This lone wolf is not very good. It's like it gives you extra defense, but for 10 seconds and a 2-minute recharge. Is it 2-minute? No, 5-minute recharge. 5 minutes. And shield scraping doesn't really. It passes, but you don't really notice it when it happens. But everything else is pretty cool. So yeah. Beyond that, I could go onto my duty officers. So I've already talked about this duty officer here, and that's pretty much a cornerstone of the build, and I would like more, ideally 2, even 3, but I've had to reduce the number in order to fit more defensive duty officers in there. The anti-monster specialist increases the duration of Ox Damp, and it gives you it gives more energy damage resistance, and in general it's just a good skill to have. It gives you speed, it gives you turn rate, and having a doff that enhances it is really useful. There's an alternative doff which gives you placates with emergency power to dampness, I think, but I prefer this one. I use it with this warp core engineer called Keel L. It's overpowered, potentially broken, doesn't really behave the way it's described. Gives you a 40% chance of removing debuffs when using emergency power abilities. So you get sub-nuked, and essentially you press an emergency power to shields, for instance, and it should give you a 40% chance to remove the sub-nuke, but really it just removes the sub-nuke for during the duration of emergency power. So you get sub-nuked, it's immediately cleansed, and with the shield and with the other captain, the other bridge officer abilities, especially Clean Getaway. It adds massively to your survival if you can cleanse most of the stuff that's thrown at you in terms of debuffs. And beyond that, I use the technicians for the Oxabat build. So yeah, that's my build. I hope that's been useful to everyone. It took me a longer time to go through than I expected, but yeah, if you have any questions, just message me in the comments, and if you like it, then hit the like button. Thanks.